Greetings, everybody. How are we doing today? Happy Saturday. We have a great show lined up. I'm really happy and grateful that you're on the line today. We have a great guest on this morning, this AM. And normally I want to share a lot of some current findings in the wellness field and give you some easier and genuinely natural ways to take care and heal yourself. But today we're going to be focusing on our topic, and our guest speaker and I are going to get into a dialogue about AI and its use in the classroom with our young people and teachers and what the implications of that are. But coming back to the healing segment, we are talking about wellness and education on the show, kind of a combination. This is the only podcast that I know of where we're talking about the well-being and wellness of teachers, focusing on that area and education and some topics, of course, that are around it. So we'll be delving into different aspects of society and our social world, and as well as the world of wellness. Let me say first that yes, we all need healing at this point. I think it's very apparent that we're getting put through it, and every last one of us needs healing on a certain level. And the sooner we admit that, the better. I think we're all coming to terms with that collectively, right? So I wanted to say that a good way of understanding this for me has been to realize that although a single reality occurs in front of us, right, or in a thought or in a perception that we have, an experience, that single reality is occurring in different dimensions at the same time, right? And so those different dimensions are really important because if we can peer into the different windows of the different dimensions on which that same reality is occurring, then we can better understand it and better incorporate it into our lives, right? So what I'm saying is, what exists in the physical, in the body, or in the physical world may not exist in the celestial, right, or the astral, or the mental. And by the same token, what exists in our mind may not yet exist in our body, right? So we have all these different dimensions or levels of reality, and they occur not only with our health, but with our social world, our society, our emotions, the things we see happening around us, the phenomena around us. And on one level of reality, we have a tumultuous political upheaval occurring around us with, you could say, collective panic and reaction and fear, maybe politics of fear, whatever you want to take and make of it. The negative side of that is very apparent, and it's right in front of us if we choose to look at it. At the same time, that reality, that same on that same topic, we have, on a higher frequency, we have all kinds of hope and courage and people that are doing amazing things and working towards the greater good, right? Maybe that's not what's featured a lot, but it's the same reality. It's the same reality. And so this is when we apply this to our own healing and our own wellness, we can understand that, hey, there might be something I'm a little bit afraid of now, or something that's happening in my mind or my body, but yet it doesn't manifest on different levels. It doesn't manifest in another level. And maybe I want to focus on that level where it's not manifesting so that it clears out of the current dimension. So, around us politically, however you want to look at the world, your worldview may be different than the person next to you. We all have a different way of seeing everything happening in front of us. We have mass conspiracy, right, on one end, and on one reality, and clear manipulation and oppression. And on the next level, at a higher frequency, we are masters of ourselves. We are masters of our destiny. And we cannot be manipulated or oppressed unless we allow somebody to do so. Would you not agree? Right? When we are in that place of being the master of our own reality. So maybe just take that away and apply it to yourself and apply it to how you're feeling and make the choice of the frequency that you want to exist. The reality is there, the frequency is there in front of you. The reality is there in front of you, but the frequency that you choose to approach that reality is up to you. And so this is the reminder that, yes, we all have that choice. And hey, we're all struggling to fight our best battle and approach all the karmic debts that we have lined up in front of us. And I'm convinced that everyone has a whole slew of them. But what frequency we approach it, I think, is very important. So what frequency do we want to exist on? Of course, we're going to slip up and dip up and do all kinds of things that we don't necessarily approve of for ourselves, and we're going to exist on low frequencies and allow fear into our paradigm. That's only natural. But when we know our why, right? When we know our why, that is why we're here. Why do we get up in the morning? Why am I needed? When we keep that why close to us, I think that's very powerful. And I would say, if you don't have that why, it might be time to find it, right? Might be time to do some soul searching. I don't know. I don't know what it is for you. I barely found out, and I'm finding out what it is for me. So only you know what it is. Only we know what it is for ourselves. Maybe it's looking closer at the things and the people around us and seeing the value in them, right? Instead of seeing the fault or the deficiency. Maybe one should go into the woods with their tent and their detox smoothie and stay there until something shifts inside of them, to find that why. But we need that. We need that why. And we're all doing our best, but it's ultimately, I think, that finding that answer that gives us our purpose and resonates within us. So be easy on yourself. Know your why. Don't be distracted. But hey, let's forgive ourselves if we are distracted once in a while. It's only natural. Speaking of the why, this is Dr. Eric B., and you're listening to Biosophy Online, the only podcast dedicated to wellness of teachers. We want everybody to be well, of course, but our teachers are really needing some scaffolding these days, right? Fatigue, chronic illness, mental imbalances, family stress, all results of stress at the workplace, a lack of voice, a lack of respect, a lack of pay, a lack of resources to do their job well, and influencing the lives of our young people. So I'm launching this organization, Biosophy Online. It's currently in the works, and with the purpose of just that. If you want to donate to the cause, I'm going to put the GoFundMe link in the chat, and please have a look at it.
Eric,
yeah.
One question. Can you please explain or describe or define, however you want to word it, what biopsy is? I hope I'm saying it correctly.
You were close enough. Biosophy Online. Biosophy is a theory of life that incorporates all those different realities that I was speaking about earlier. So the different dimensions of life, understanding that life is existing in the physical on this level, and then in the celestial and the mental and all these different realms, all at the same time. So the biosophy is that biosophy in itself is the view of life existing in totality instead of just our one reality that we're looking at. If it's on just a physical or a mental level. So I'm glad you asked, and I chose biosophy also because of my last name and my name, Bicyker. So, that kind of lines up as well. And biosophy itself is really just a philosophy of life.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. I'm going to ask everybody to put themselves on mute because for some reason I cannot find the button that mutes everybody. Usually that's ready and available, but it's challenging. The podcast, everybody, because you're a technician here, and you're speaking, and so I'm rolling with the punches as usual, and bobbing and weaving here, as they say. Getting back to the GoFundMe link, I'm going to put that in the chat. Here it is. If you want to check it out or pass it on to somebody that you think would be willing to donate or help us out in some way, it is to provide teachers with various services, and most of the services are going to be free, of course. We're encouraging high school and college grads to be teachers. That's one of the big things we're going to be focusing on. And we're also going to provide free therapy to those teachers who have been exposed to violence in school or are dealing with mental issues that they need to address in themselves and their work. So we want to provide a couple of free services. Also, another one is the resource hub. We're going to have a resource hub for everybody, for all the teachers, so that they can get up to date. There's the link in the chat, so that they can get up to date resources for their classes, including some of the things we're going to be talking about today. My email, everybody, I'll put in there, and you can check it out at any point. But if you want to get in touch with me, please do. I'd love to have a conversation about anything that we're talking about here. So let's begin. Let's start. And I know that my good friend is on the line here, our guest for today. First, let's jump into the topic, and let me say this about AI. Here are some of the questions that I think of. Are our children being deprived of crucial social skills and meaningful relationships as virtual and artificial technology become the norm? Are we becoming accustomed to this kind of jaded, false view of reality, all of us on a certain level, and really, is there anything that can be done about it? And or is it something that we're maybe not aware of? Are we embarking on this journey into the unknown and discovering maybe a type of technology that has the potential to enhance our lives? So the whole of the conversation is in front of us. At this point, everybody, I'd like to welcome and introduce Chike Nwabukwu, who is a father, he's a husband, he's a teacher, of course, he's a consultant, and an author as well, Chike the writer. And a good friend of mine also, who trained capoeira with me back in the day. We lived in Brazil for a little while and trained. And most importantly, we're both educators right now at this time. We're trying to navigate these massive changes that are occurring in our world and seeing these manifestations in our class. So, Chike, how are you? Are you on the line today?
I am. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm just gonna ask everyone out there if you could mute yourselves, and let me take one little look and see if I can make sure that happens. Not quite. The tools are the tools, and we'll continue and carry on. Chike, how's Mother Nature and Father Time treating you?
Great question. I'm doing well, brother. I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm thankful to be alive.
Yes, it's a great place to start. I think we can all resonate with that. Chike, I want to read off some statistics first about AI in the classroom, and then
Sure.
I have a few questions for you. And I'd like to. I know you and I talked about this a little bit, and we agree on some things, and we probably don't agree on other things. And I think it's a good dialogue. Let me say that first, half of all 13 and 14-year-old students, which is 7th and 8th grade adolescents, are currently interacting with AI. This was found. Also, 50% of those students are stating that their teachers haven't really encouraged them to try AI tools. Around 44% of teachers use AI for research. 37% generate classroom materials like tests and assignments. And 65% analyze student data using AI-powered tools and predict academic performance. Our last statistic, I thought this one was kind of interesting. A quarter of public K through 12 teachers say using AI tools in K through 12 education does more harm than good. So that's a quarter of us. And about a third say that there's an equal mix of benefit and harm. And about 6% say it does more good than harm. And another 35% say that they're not sure. So those are just some numbers for you. What they mean in the end, it is what it is. But Chike, what is your take on the use of AI in the classroom in general by both students and teachers, or do you see it as a separate issue?
Excuse me. First, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about this in a public forum. As you said, we've spoken about this some before, and I know not everything I would say may resonate with everyone, but hopefully something does. But let me just small context of who I am. Certified English teacher, but currently teaching college and career readiness at a high school in New Jersey. And just by the nature of what I teach, it's future focused, right? College and career readiness. So with that being said, back to your question, what is my take on AI in the classroom? Me personally, I think it's a great opportunity to prepare students for the future. The same way you read off stats, 55, according to a Pew Research Center study, 55% of Americans use AI, right? Without totally dating myself, but it's just that, I came of age when, put it like this, my children, I have two children, my children have never known the world without YouTube. Yeah. Right, and then, even computers, when I was coming up of age or whatnot, that's something that became more of a thing. It's a technology to help people do things faster, help them do things better, and I just think that's the way the world is going. And rather be afraid of it, we should try to train people to use it ethically, as opposed to saying don't use it at all, because I don't think that is necessarily setting up young people for the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it seems like, you have kind of an adaptive perspective, whereas, this thing is, whether one believes that it's being thrown upon us or it's organically growing out of the needs of human beings and the institutions and the human mind, wherever it's coming from, it's something that is here to stay, and we should adapt our classrooms as needed. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And the reason I brought up YouTube, I just realized I didn't make the whole point with that, was because, YouTube came out February 14th, actually, 2005, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But I'm saying today we literally have YouTube influencers. Whether people think that's a good thing, a bad thing, anything like that, part of even how this podcast will get out there is going on to YouTube. Mm-hmm. This was not a job 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Right. So the same way AI is going to take away certain jobs, it's always also going to create new jobs as well. And I just think same thing, we've seen the same thing with the internet, same thing with the advent of more computer use. It's like it's going to take away certain jobs, absolutely. But I think life is about being adaptive. So we should be adaptive and say, hey, wherever this thing's coming from, whether we like it or not, it is literally here to stay. And I think the best thing we can do is train people on how to use it in a way that we think is ethical for humanity.
Well said. What are some of the things some of the tools that you've been exposed to, and some of the things maybe that you use or are familiar with, just to give our audience kind of a feel for what's going on right now in the classroom or beyond?
I think like most people, everyone was probably first introduced to ChatGPT. I was introduced to it some years ago before the launch happened. I was actually working at a school, and one of the teachers there said they had an early version of this thing called ChatGPT, and at the time, I was about to start writing a faceless. Create a faceless YouTube channel about financial literacy, and I was writing scripts. And he said, hey, I should use this thing. And I was just like, as a writer, I'm just like, this is, like I didn't believe a robot or, AI could write for me or write anything like that and things like that or whatnot. Yeah. However, he kept on, advocating for it. And then, I tried it right before the big launch. and I was like, wow, this thing is interesting. Like, it does a lot, you know. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
the launch came, and everybody was using it, and I was like, you know, I
Mm.
told more people about it. And long story short is that it doesn't necessarily. I think part of it, I'm saying, I use it mostly for writing. I'm going to bring it back to education as well. I use it mostly for writing, but what it is that if you doesn't matter what prompt you put it in my opinion, it still sounds like a robot. So there's a lot of editing that one has to go in there and
Mm.
do,
Mhm.
right? And I think that even when it comes back to school, that's probably more of a skill set that we should be focusing more on, is that, okay, how do we take literature that already exists and learn how to better edit it so it can be more of who we are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's lots of I can bring up lots of different examples of, you know, how this has been used before, but there's also right now, you know, Google has Gemini,
Mhm.
which is an AI. There's also Gemini for teens,
What does
right?
Gemini do? What is that? How does that function?
Gemini is just another AI. It's like ChatGPT. It does something similar, but it's built into all Gmails, all Google products now, all Gmails, right? Even now, when you type in something on Google, the first answer it gives you is an AI generated response,
Right.
right? There's also this. I was introduced to this thing called QuestionWell, which is actually an AI built for teachers, which is you can take an article, you put it inside QuestionWell, and then afterwards QuestionWell would generate, you know, either short answer questions for you, multiple choice,
Mhm.
anything of those nature. It does all those things for you.
Fascinating.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and it just helps you. You know, I have a assistant principal at my school that was telling me that she went and used AI to, you know, to comment on, I think it was a lesson plan using Bloom's taxonomy, you know, and give specific comments and things like that. And it said it took, you know, it took shorter time for her to do that than it was for her. I think she had some other function she had to do, but basically all that was done within, you know,
Mhm.
3 or 5 minutes or less, you know. Now her job was to go in and edit it to make sure it says what she wanted to say and make it more of her voice, things of that nature. So
Okay.
there's lots of AIs out there, lots of things popping up. I just
Mhm.
feel as though that this is where the world is, and we should figure out how to adapt to it.
I think we all hear you well enough, and you certainly mentioned, you know, the teachers, some of the advantages that teachers have. I know the first time that I had seen it, I was Sunday night. I was over at my friend's house. I was at actually a friend of ours, and I said, well, I have to get back home and do some lesson plans. And he said, let me show you something real quick. You remember Fire Marshal Bill from? Let me show you something. So I said, what is it? He said, what are your lesson plans going to be on? What's the objective? He typed it all into the chat GPT, and it came up with a whole plan with activities and everything. I was shocked. And I said, wow, this is a big one. This is going to change everything, especially for teachers. I want to talk more about um, the use of, you know, students using this on the back end, and of course the implications of that in a second. I'd like to come back to that because we know that teachers definitely have an advantage with it. But when we talk about some of these tools, in Gemini I'm not familiar with. I'm going to look into it after that. I remember also being recently introduced to the augmented reality. And for those of you who aren't familiar with augmented reality, this is where you get a set of Google glasses, or whatever type of glasses they are, and you put the apparatus on your head, of course, and you are able to experience a different reality, depending on what your definition of experience is, through certain senses, right? Through the visuals mainly. You're not smelling anything, you're not touching anything different, but it is a visual experience where you can overlay. You can have the background that you're currently in. Like I could be in this room right now with my Google glasses, but I could introduce an elephant into the scene, right? So an elephant will come walking into the room, or a whatever, a car, or, you know, so there's this two-dimension overlay of reality. So that's one of the tools that augmented reality is bringing in. And another one with the same apparatus is, of course, and you're probably familiar with this one, is of course allowing somebody to virtually be somewhere um, through those lenses. So you can literally take your students to the Grand Canyon with these glasses. If you have it set on the Grand Canyon and they take this journey, whether it's a helicopter simulated ride or whatever, and they experience the Grand Canyon, right? And so I remember wearing these glasses at one point, and it was so thought-provoking for me. And I tried not to, be repulsed. I tried not to be excited. I just wanted to kind of observe and think about the implications. But it runs very deep. It runs very deep. And these conversations are becoming more and more important, okay? So augmented reality is using software, apps, and hardware to create that digital overlay. And it's really getting big in the social studies realm. I don't know how much it's being used, but that's where they're pushing it. There's a push for it as well. And that's a little different than virtual reality, which is a completely immersive computer-generated environment, right? So by the way, Chike, have you had any experience with the augmented? Have you ever tried those glasses, those Google glasses or any of that stuff?
I have. I don't have extensive experience with it, but I have used it, and I think just as you were saying, that it's an opportunity. It's a different learning experience that could really enhance the classroom, or just forget the classroom at this stage. I'll just say enhance the learning experience.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What do you feel like? Have you thought about maybe the effects or the results of our human emotional content? Right here we have all these tools at our disposal. Let's say our students, our adolescent students, or our younger elementary students have these tools at their disposal, and almost like an endless set of rabbit holes right in front of them. Maybe I'm exaggerating. And they are given maybe a choice or an opportunity to explore one or more of those dimensions or rabbit holes. And do you have any concern for maybe their emotional, if they can manage this sort of thing? Doesn't it seem like maybe it could be a lot to sort of have the effect of having too many choices and too much to explore and not being able to focus upon one thing? Do you think that that's something that may be interfering the benefits of what we're doing here?
I think it's definitely a challenge. I definitely think, but I think adults face the same thing, right? As adults, we're all exposed to internet. That's one thing I tell a lot of educators is that these students have the same internet that we do, right? So if we're Googling stuff, if we're using stuff, they can do the same thing, right? Unless they have, an account that doesn't allow it or something like that. But I mean, outside of that, they can do the same thing. So I think it's definitely a challenge for humanity, not just for students. And I think this is where we have to focus more on emphasizing or re-emphasizing some of the human elements of just existing, right? There's a school I wanted to bring up. It's called the Alpha School. I believe they're in Texas. Excuse me, I believe they're in Texas, but I know they're trying to bring out some more schools. But long story short, their model right now is AI teaches students, or it's an AI-led class for about 2 hours out of the day. AI-led class for about 2 hours out of the day, and then afterwards, the rest of the day is like hands-on human skills. Whether they want to focus on playing an instrument, they want to focus on, learning financial literacy and starting a business, or the rest of the day is more about interaction and human skills and things like that. But apparently, this school is actually performing better than other schools. And I just think that's the future of where we're going to go to, because while we do have a lot of options, I mean, in a way, we've always had a lot of options. The internet just opened up more to us. Internet just opened up more to us. So if you see by my last name or my name, Chike, I'm a child of Nigerian immigrants, born and raised in the States primarily, schooled in Africa briefly. But long story short, I know growing up, if we wanted to call Nigeria, It was a whole long process. You had to call an operator, call Nigeria. It's like all sorts of stuff. Now I get on WhatsApp, I dial, boop, it's like ringing, calling somebody,
Yeah.
next door. Even if it's video as well. It's just these things have opened up. There's 8 billion people, 9 billion, however many people on the earth at this. There's always been lots of options. The internet has just opened up more for us.
Well, I think you make a great point. Despite how maybe massive and vast this all seems, it seems to have a sort of a means to where we're going, and we might not be able to kind of connect it with being the human experience so far, but there's something to be said for being able to experience it all and being able to, I think, maneuver and master it all to a certain extent. I think.
Can I add something to that? I don't mean to cut you off, but that's part of the point I'm making. I think that is what the new educator's job is going to be, is how do we maneuver this, rather than how do we cap this and don't let people get exposed to it. It's more so, hey, how can we teach young people to maneuver in this reality?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And as somebody that comes from the health field as well, we know that the nervous system itself and the brain respond in a way to perceive stimuli, whether it's augmented reality or virtual reality or anything, in a real way, right? The body can literally feel like it's on a roller coaster if we're wearing the glasses or in the theater that is experiencing that, not to the fullest, but significantly enough, right? Our heart rate increases, our automatic nervous system activates the amygdala in the brain. It will take on the action of the whole body, will be responding to this situation. And that said, plenty of there's plenty of research that has shown that the technology is creating these dopamine hits for young people and adults, but young people being less aware of them, of course. We can put ourselves in the same category as far as what is accessible to us, but as far as how we approach those things, we have to I think we have to denote that adults are different than young people, and the young people, just like not making the literal comparison, but just like the rats that are in the experiment, and many adults are going to go for the dopamine hit. They're going to go for the dopamine. And because that powerful desire is shown to be chosen even at the cost of the health of the organism. And so this becomes when you bring that into a virtual reality and a virtual roller coaster situation, if we're educating our children in this way with this ability to achieve at this level, to dive into information at this level, isn't it affecting their mental health? I mean, are we begging the question here? If we're smart enough to invent this, are we smart enough not to become dependent on it? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think before we had AI, there were computers, right? And computer. I mean, it's the same conversation that goes on before AI. Computers, people like, hey, you know what? This is, some people are saying, hey, this is a good thing, helps do things faster, quicker. Some people are saying, hey, they're going to get too caught up in it. Social media came about, hey, you can reach more people. Some people say it's too caught up in it. It's like, I think all these things are real. I think they're, I don't discredit the idea that there's a real challenge, psychological, mental health, all those things, challenges that come along with these new advancements. I think that, I don't want to say unfortunate. The challenge is how do we navigate it, right? Yeah. I mean, there's definitely challenges that come along with it. It's not easy. Like I said, adults, and I definitely acknowledge the difference between adults and children. But I'm saying, since we're speaking as educators and our job primarily is to prepare the next generation, I just think we're doing a disservice by saying, hey, we should not expose them to it, as opposed to saying, no, we should expose them to it, but we have to figure out how do we navigate it. And even being honest and vulnerable with children, like, hey, we too are still trying to figure out how to navigate this, right? But we can give you adult wisdom now about what are some of the best approaches to go about it. And they take that baton and they run with it and they pass it it to the next generation. And
Uh-huh.
hopefully we find some through line between each generation that figures out how to navigate this space in the best way possible, best humanly way possible.
Nice. Absolutely. I think that young people today, some of their favorite stories are not about the things that I think we used to like to hear about. Their favorite
Exactly.
stories, that I found are about technology. And our first interaction with a certain type of technology. For some reason, they really gravitate to that. I tell them the first time I received an email, and I think back of when my father told me the real brief story about we had an uncle named Uncle Shorty way back in the day, and 1955, Uncle Shorty walks in the living room and sees children sitting around looking, staring at a screen in the
Exactly.
living. And
Exactly.
what he said, he's an immigrant, and at the time he said, you know what, stuffing old, this is the end. This is the end.
Mhm.
And that's what
Mhm.
he said in 1955. So it's a
And
change.
now we're communicating on a screen.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And what an experience. What a collective ride we have going here. Speaking of which, speaking of the changes, and Uncle Shorty walking into a living room and being used to a community where everybody sat on the porch and talked, and listened maybe to the ball game on the radio. Let's talk about the social implications. With the sociological background, of course, I dive into my sociology and found a couple of good studies that were done and with interesting findings. One of them examines the dynamics of power and wealth. And I want to invite everyone to jump in after I mention a couple of these studies, and we could uh, make some more comment. But the dynamics of power and wealth within the creation of these AI algorithms, and the algorithm is a scary word, but it's just sort of a program of instructions of what the AI is to do, what the tool is to do, of course, right? But this particular study looked at the dynamics of power and wealth within the creation of these algorithms to show how users and creators of AI literally reinforce the great unequal stratified class patterns, where the well-off have all these tools and all the access to create the playing field, so to speak, and the working poor, and maybe the rest of us, teachers pretty soon, will be left about 2 or 3 steps behind. So one could say that American culture has already colonized and dominated much of the world. That's no secret. Isn't this just another form of colonization, Chike? And the people that are in rural and impoverished areas of the world, they're not going to have access to this. What are the social implications here? And does it change anything for you when thinking about that stuff?
So I'll comment. I know you wanted to open up to everybody, so I'll try to keep it
Yeah,
short.
sure.
Me personally, once again, I'll go back to my heritage. Being Nigerian, Nigerian descent, however you want to call it, or whatnot. Everybody, same way everybody knows American culture is mostly dominated the world. Everybody also knows Africa tends to be, economically on the lower end of the totem pole. At least traditionally it was, rather. But that's what I'm saying. That I think is just about shifting our mindsets, right? Because if we go in with the same attitude of, hey, we don't have access, then
Mm,
it's like that's the reality we're going to get. Whereas in Africa, people everybody doesn't have a computer,
yeah.
but people have 2 to 3 cell phones. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that, hey, you know what? If cell phones can be the great equalizer, or
Mm-hmm.
as I think I'm hearing now, they're trying to do glasses now or
Mm-hmm.
something. Going back to augmented reality, trying to use glasses now. It's like, certain steps we're gonna have to skip. Like we don't have to duplicate what happened here elsewhere to be like that's a form of advancement. And end of the day, it's just like, hey, I do agree. That's what I'm saying. Programming AI and try to get more access, and get the working poor, more access, things like that. But it's like certain steps are going to be skipped, right? Like maybe everyone doesn't have to go through certain steps.
Mm-hmm.
End of the day, if people have access to internet, whether it's through a cell phone, through glasses, through a computer, things like that, just getting that access to the internet, in my opinion, helps to equalize so much more than just saying that, hey, you know what, people don't have access, you know. And I understand there's challenges around that, but I think that's part of our work. How do we, because these things were created to create more of an equal playing field. Right. I mean, it's like I make films as well. Beforehand, everything was Hollywood, Hollywood, Hollywood. Now people win, awards by shooting on their phones. So it's like you have this access now to this new technology. As long as you're working to get people that access, then I think that helps to even out the playing field.
I would agree, and I think that every time we see one of these jumps, one of these major advancements, there's always the trickle, the left behind and the trailing of it, but there seems to be a quick catching up, if you will. And maybe it doesn't happen all over the world, but there are people, the working poor, at least around the world, I don't know about America, I think a lot of them don't focus on what they don't have. They do. They tend to focus on what they have, and they make
exactly.
If they can get another cell phone, or if they can make a bicycle out of the materials they have in their yard, then that's what they're going to do. And so, I think you make a good point there. I'm glad let's dive into the race paradigm. Here's another study. I'll choose one more. But before I jump in there, does anyone have any comment on that? Kind of social implications or anything thus far? I should have backtracked a little bit, but does anybody have anything that they're kind of want to reflect on from what Chike and I have brought up here?
Yes, I do.
All right.
and I am so grateful that this is the topic for today. Chike, you said some very powerful things that really has impacted me personally, and I'll try my best to make it succinct. It really truly boils down for me, and for many people, a shifting of the mindset, because I know that AI is around, it's not going anywhere, but I was and there's still some concerns, not as much as before, but concerns about people's jobs, losing jobs. But Chike, you were saying, yes, some jobs will go away, but then new ones will be created. And you are absolutely right in that understanding. Also, when you were sharing about your use of WhatsApp, I find myself using WhatsApp more and more, and you can't tell me that there's not a large AI influence involving that. And then lastly, even though everyone or a lot of people may not have laptops or computers or whatever, everybody, and I'm saying that as a general term, and we can make the adjustments in terms of how much or how many, but everybody has a cell phone, and a cell phone has become a portable computer, and much of the functions on it are AI driven. And so it is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And it's a matter of truly adjusting our mindset to understand it, accept it, utilize it, and move forward with it, knowing that everything changes. Nothing stays the same. Everything changes. So that's my commentary. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Dr. Ali. Absolutely. Well, the continuous ebb and flow is upon us. There's a real quick study I wanted to mention that brings the racial paradigm, but coming back to the social world, I want to finish with some really interesting realizations here. But one study called "The Whiteness of AI" looks at imagery and language and culture and linguistics, and found that AI carries forth the Western white or American Anglo ideals and values only in its output so far, or exponentially. So the mechanism of AI and the products show an extreme lack of diversity. And we know that, of course, whoever's using it is going to get whatever they put into it at a certain point. But there's also, of course, the lead on the lead as far as who's making the algorithms, who has the access, who has the money to create the most advanced tools. Of course, those algorithms that are being put in are oftentimes colorblind and oftentimes void of cultural nuance, not recognizing social nuance constructs, if you will. If you type "black woman smiling" into ChatGPT, and this is, I don't know if this has changed recently, but you'll get back a bunch of distorted imagery. You'll get back even pictures of white women with black dresses on, and there's not, what you would think if you on the in the output. Spell check as far as linguistics go. Let's think about the nuances of language. Look at all the many different groups, diverse groups that we have just in this country alone that speak in a certain way and have certain traits and nuances to their language, to the American English version, if you will. A lot of that, aren't we losing a lot of that? And how could we move forward as a society when we're using these tools that don't recognize many of the racial realities or the social realities, class, religion, gender, a lot of the social realities that are in front of us, if they're inherently carrying this bias, including extreme wealth inequality, which many of these platforms perpetuate as the norm, which it is the norm. But how are we going to experience any change if it's coming from above and just trickling down, to the lower classes, who then have to keep up, right? And just learn that new Western language and that new version of English. And what gets left behind? Their cultural folkways, their mores, their language, their history. So I think that we have to think about that. And we know, yes, everything changes. But what I think is important is we have to recognize and come to terms with the things that we are losing in the process and the implication of those things.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
Sorry. Person, thank you, Dr. Ali, for your commentary as well. I think I'm bringing that up. For one thing, I thought it was good commentary, but also just going back to the point she was making is just about a change in mindset, to answer your question, because just because you're the first doesn't mean you're the best. Right. And I think there's a value in being first, especially in the business sense. Right. But just because you did something first doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the best. So while I agree that, there's, as you were saying, things tend to be leading towards, I forgot the title you used. You said the whitewashing of AI or something like that, or something to that degree. I'm like, those things exist, but those things have always existed, or at least in my generation and, similar generations before me. It's just like these are things people are always kind of working against. So I think it's more so the same way you brought up the point that, people in poor communities don't necessarily focus on what they don't have. They tend to focus on what they do have. So end of the day, as long as there's access, you have a cell phone, I guarantee there's going to be, China just created DeepSeek. I think it's called DeepSeek, a DeepSeek AI, which is based on Chinese, which is a Chinese AI, which is going to be based more, catered towards what the Chinese, how the Chinese see the world. I guarantee with Africa, going to become, one of the most populous continents in the world, you're going to get an African one as well. You may get one from Europe. You may get one from South America. So it's like right now we're in the infancy stage of AI, and you have these things that are coming out, and this is the way, not to dive deep into politics, but it's just like, end of the day, it's a reflection of where America is, but these things will change, I believe, over time, as long as people continue to have access and as long as we're not shutting down the opportunity for people to create. I think part of our work is just going to be, teaching more about media literacy, how to decipher what's going on, with these AIs, and then afterwards giving people the opportunity to create.
Well, they're creating their own wives and girlfriends. I heard in China through algorithms, and that's a real fact. But I think you bring up a great point, and absolutely, there's going to be different forms of this and different versions, and being first isn't necessarily being the best. I think it's very appropriate to say that. Absolutely. I will say that as social creatures, from the work of all the, Durkheim and those in the past, and the work of those that did social psychology, our immune health, our healing ability, our overall happiness, our increase statistically when we have loving and trusting human relationships in the classroom. If we are having our young people, instead of working with one another, if we're sending them off to do the assignment and AI and down the rabbit hole, are we taking away this very important in-person interaction, this interpersonal intelligence that we need? Instead, are we replacing it with this false sense of closeness? Are we limiting the exposure of diverse, perspectives and genuine relationships that kids have when they grow up by throwing them all this technology? Any perspectives on that, Chike, as far as kids in the classroom using it in that sense?
This is when I go back to alpha school. I think we only lose that when we don't when we throw it away. Alpha school allows AI in the classroom, literally allows AI to teach young people. If I'm not mistaken, there is a teacher in the class to help guide them, but they're literally learning through a computer, as many young people do. I have one of my children's 5th grade. She tells me she learns more from YouTube Shorts than she does in the classroom. And that's 5th grade, 10 years old. And I mean, it's hard to argue some of those things, because I'm like, whoa, how'd you know that? What I mean? She asks a certain thing, how'd you know that? She's like, well, YouTube Shorts, right? So my thing is, we only lose those things if we throw them away. If we take the example of alpha school, I'm not saying it's the perfect thing, but long story short, we use some technology in the classroom, that we also make space for these interpersonal, like just innately human things that that are just as important, sometimes even more important than what like being able to be a good public speaker, a critical thinker, innovative, strategist. Like, all these type of things are just innately human that we can still develop as well. But as long as we're not throwing that away and just saying give everything to AI, then I don't think there's an issue. I just think we have to learn how to balance it.
And I put the alpha school in the chat there. Dr. Ali, do you have something there?
Yeah, just real quick. And actually, Chike just hit on it. It's a matter of finding the balance, and it's an ongoing process of finding the balance of AI and human people interaction. And it's not perfect. Lord knows, whatever that is.
Right.
But it's an ongoing work in progress, and the only way we're going to do it is to do it. There's no shortcuts. We really truly have to do it.
Yeah.
And do it on an ongoing basis, and be open to knowing that the thinking and the behavior and the patterns are going to change and evolve. When we were speaking a short while ago, I got a memory thought of back in the day when we went from riding horses to the first invention of a car.
Yes.
And yes, that car was the first. It wasn't the best, but it was the first, and then things evolved from there. So I really believe that that things will evolve from the whole mindset of dealing with AI, as long as we don't just push it off and say, that's it, boom, and we don't actively stay involved with the process.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading about the early Pennsylvania railroads, where they couldn't get people for like the first 5 years. People were getting on the train and throwing up they could. It was too much.
That's true.
They were nauseous. They were sick. They couldn't sell the idea of getting on this train to people because it was
That's
so
true.
advanced at the time. So it's
Yeah.
there's something to be said about the human mind and the ability to adapt. And Chike, I'm glad you brought up this Alpha School. I really want to look into that and make a note of it. And let's agree that too bad, most 95% of our schools, 99.9% of them out there, are not doing what the Alpha School is doing. And that I think is where the work needs to be, and the fight needs to be fought. If there's a fight, there doesn't have to be a fight, but there has to be the awareness of balance. And I think both of you are hitting on that we have to be able to see where there's a tipping point, and there's just this, it seems to be this constant obsession with technology. Every time you use the word, it's like fireworks go off, in public schools, because there's this blanket admiration and seemingly idolization of technology. And the Alpha School and maybe some others are recognizing that it has its great advantages and benefits, but it has to be equaled out with that time of social interaction and use of the hands and engagement on that very human level as well. So I think that's going to be one of the continual diagrams here that or dialogues that we have here on the show, and being aware of that. And I'm glad to have that resource from you. I'm just going to wrap things up here, everybody. Chike, I want to give you one more chance to just say kind of maybe what you're up to, and maybe how people can contact you if they want to learn more about what you do, and any final thoughts. Would you like to go on that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Once again, I appreciate the opportunity just to be heard. I know, I don't know how many people are on this podcast right now, but to be able to feature my
About
voice.
900, I think about 960, Chike. No.
No problem. Like I said, well, even if it's 9, even if it's 2, I just, I understand the value in being able to be heard. So I'm thankful for that. But yeah, as I said, I currently teach college and career readiness, but I'm also launching as a business and education consultant. So right now you can find me, just through my name. Chike is the first one. That's Chike, and then last name N as in Nancy, WAB as in boy, UKWU. That's Chike Nwabukwu. Maybe I'll put it in the chat as well.
I got you already. You're in.
Okay, no problem. But yeah, I have a couple of things, coming in the works right now. So I'll just say right now, just Google the name. I do have a personal website, which is our personal website. You can find me, but I have some other things coming as well. So I don't want to speak about all of them just yet. But if you're following me, you'll see those things in the next few months.
Awesome, thanks, Chike. And you bring a wonderful perspective, one that is very valued on this podcast, and I hope to have you back. And you and I we're in the kind of the same parallel here. We're moving in very similar directions, and it's good to have somebody to relate to. And I really value you, my brother, and I wish you well, and I wish the family well back in Philly. Hope you guys are digging yourselves out of the snow.
Yeah, the snow actually has melted, but there's some more coming today. So
I miss it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, brother, and thanks everyone else for listening. I really appreciate you taking the time or following through. Please subscribe to the channel. We have a lot of things coming up. I have some more great speakers coming on at the show. Maybe even at a certain point, 1 or 2 of my own students, and who knows. But next week we're going to be focusing on supplements and whether are supplements really worth taking, and which ones are worth taking, and when do we take them. That'll be some of our discussion next week. I'll be discussing some of those findings, especially revitalizing the liver. We're going to focus on that. If you've been drinking for a number of years or a certain period of time. In the social realm, social educational realm, I think we're going to talk about Black history. And I'm going to dive in there and I'm going to say, how does a white man teach black history in February here? Because I've been kind of toying around with that myself and with some of my students. And so I want to invite that little topic on next week. I think it'll be interesting, and we'll dive into that paradigm. And again, everybody, and as always, I'm here if you want to learn more about what I can do for you or how you can help me with the launching of the business. This is something I've tried a couple of things in my life. You know what they say: you get knocked down 8 times, you get up 9. But I've certainly gotten my knockdowns. But this is something that when I really have been centering myself in the last couple of months or maybe even years or so in my life, this is something that I really believe is coming from the core of me, because it's something that is needed within myself and within my environment, in the world that I live and the people that I'm with every day, the people that I love. So if you want to learn more about how to help teachers through Biosophy Online, let me know, and I put it in the chat. Keep it even, everybody. Okay? Take care of yourselves. Much love, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next show.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate that.
All right. Peace.